Hello, my name is Mali and welcome back to my channel. Things have been happening the last few days in the world, in the US, also in Germany, and I know that sometimes it may seem like everything is just getting worse and worse, and I think we just need a little bit of hope. So today I'm going to give you 3 books that make me feel more hopeful. These are not books necessarily where everything is great and everyone is happy throughout the whole book. These are books with intense topics where I think that these topics are being dealt with in a way that makes me believe in humanity. We are going to get right into it, though first I'm going to give you 2 honourable mentions, because these books weren't necessarily something that give me the feeling of hope in a way that the other 3 books do, but I think that other people might still get some out of these. The honorable mentions are both well-known classics, the other 3 books are not as well-known. The first honorable mention is The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. It's about this little prince who comes to Earth, and I think he talks to a fox about the things that he has seen in space. This is not a book that for me personally opened up any conversation that for me would have been important at the time that I read this, but I do think that because this is a very whimsy story, a lot of people will be able to escape from the real world for a while. The second honorable mention is A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, and in A Christmas Carol there is this character whose name I've forgotten. How did I forget such an iconic name as Ebenezer Scrooge? I don't know either. But he's very rich. He is basically a symbol for capitalism, and he's visited by the ghosts of Christmas, the ghosts of the past, the ghosts of the present, and the ghosts of the future, to see where his capitalism comes from and where it's leading to. And it's essentially just a critique on the extreme capitalism that people sometimes strive for. Not gonna lie, I only got this book because of the Barbie movie. The biggest difference is that there the main character has a friend and it's a lot about friendship. But if you're interested in the book, I think that this might give you hope in the sense that the main character in the end, I don't think this is a spoiler, I think everybody knows what's happening in the end. He realizes that his capitalism is damaging not just people around him but himself, and so he finds the spirit of Christmas and gives away some money. Now let's get to the actual books. The first book is called Wonder by Raquel J. Palacio, or Palacio, not entirely certain how you would pronounce that. This book is about August, a boy who was born with Treacher-Collins syndrome, a syndrome that is genetic and deforms your face. He has been homeschooled until now, but his parents want him to mingle with other people, and so they enroll him in a school when he gets to 5th grade. He does find some friends there, but there are obviously also a lot of people that bully him because he's different. And then there's also his sister, who is ashamed to be seen with him, who also is afraid of being bullied herself because she's grown up always knowing that people look different at the family because of her brother, and she just wants to find friends as well. And then August hears one of his friends bad-mouthing him behind his back, and the story goes from there. And it's a very heartbreaking and heartwarming story at the same time, because it talks about bullying a lot, it talks about friendship, and about how difficult it can be to be different, how difficult it can be when one of your family members is different, and how difficult it can be when you're friends with somebody who is different. Because I think that's something that we always overlook, that if you're friends with somebody who is seen as not a desirable person, oftentimes you will also be bullied, and you will often also be excluded from other groups. And to have the strength to still be friends with this person is something that I find very admirable. And that is why I thought this book was so great, because August does find friends, but he and his friends also learn that it's not always easy. I think this book is marketed as a children's story. I read it when I was like 14 or maybe 15, and I don't think that it should only be read by children. This is a book that people of all age groups can read without it taking away from the experience. The next book is not a novel, but rather a collection of poetry. It's called Bad Diasphora Poems by Momtaza Mehri. I obviously cannot really talk from experience if it comes to Diasphora, I was lucky to be born in Germany as somebody whose family has always lived in Germany and I never had to flee. The only reason I ever left my country was to study, and that is a huge privilege. So I can't tell you the feelings of diaspora, of experiencing being forced to leave your home. But I think this poetry collection is a good start if you want to grasp the situation, or at least come close to grasping it, that some people out there are actually in. And the way that the author uses words to show you what it feels like to leave your country, or maybe one of your ancestors had to leave your country for horrible reasons, and then coming back to this country, or maybe visiting it for the first time in your life, or maybe not knowing if you will ever see it again or at all. And I think the way she put this in words is just very moving. I think it was the very first poem I read, and I remember reading it and thinking, this does something to me, even though I've never been driven out from anywhere really. But because of the way that the author managed to phrase it, it was not just hopeless because you have to leave your country, it was also finding a new home at times. And it was also while being in a situation that is, for me, unimaginable, coming to terms with it and accepting it. And that might, for some people, seem like the very definition of hopelessness. But I think for me it was more of a realization that sometimes things are not in our hands. The third book is another novel called Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Malinda. And this it is marketed as a romance story, though there is surprisingly a lot of politics and history in this. It's a story about a lesbian couple in the 50s. More precisely, we follow Lily, who is in high school in her last year, I think it's her last year, and she falls in love with another girl at this high school, and together they go to this club called the Telegraph Club, where they meet other non-straight couples and they form friendships with some of them, all the while keeping their own relationship a secret from their family and their friends. And at the same time there's a lot about fears of communism in the 50s and of racism against Asians, because Lily is from a Chinese family and her father is in danger of being deported, even though he has lived in the US for years and is working there as a doctor. You see a lot of racism in this book against Chinese people, and then there's also obviously a lot of homophobia, especially when people start suspecting that Lily might not be straight. And again, this seems like a very hopeless book once more. But in this case, for one, it has quite a different ending. Obviously, when a poetry collection has a poetry collection, can tell a story, but it doesn't have an ending in the way that we think of an ending. While obviously this, as a romance novel, does have an ending. I'm not sure if I would call it a good ending. It's bittersweet. But I think the reason why this has given me hope is because it shows us how far we've come as a society. Lily could not talk to her family or her friends about not fitting into the heteronormative standards, and she was pretty afraid of people finding out, and she knew that she would not be accepted. And I think that nowadays, while obviously not everyone will accept people for loving who they love, because we're still in a society where people like to hate, but I think it's gotten easier to be accepted by the right kind of people. And I think even in this book you can see that if you find good people, then they won't care about who you love, if they're the same gender or the same sex, or if they are different ethnicity, if they have a different background. They did find people who would accept them. It was just harder, and the book shows that quite clearly. And it also shows you how far we've come with racism, even though a lot of the themes explored here you can still find today. Obviously we haven't solved racism in any way, especially structurally, but at least it's not looked down upon as much anymore if you may fall in love with someone who's not from the same ethnicity, the same background as you are. And I think that's just why it's given me hope, because these books deal with serious topics. They deal with things that you often can't control. At least there are people out there writing about these issues in a way that you can actually see that the people that are being discriminated against, it's not always their fault. They just want to be themselves and want to be accepted in all three of these books. And I think that just knowing that there are people out there that have realized this and that are writing books about this, or even knowing that these people themselves have experienced similar things and have kind of come to terms with it, or are at least strong enough to write about them and to be able to show the rest of the world, this is something that I've experienced, but you are wrong about doing this to me, and I'm absolutely fine the way I am. I think that is what gives me hope with these books. A book for me doesn't have to have a hopeful ending to give me hope. And I think that's all I wanted to kind of say with this video. That even though sometimes we might feel like there's nothing else that could happen that could make this better, there's always someone out there who will accept you and who will realize what you're going through. And we just have to find the right people or the right books. Anyway, I don't know where I was going with this, but these are the 3 recommendations I have for you in case you needed something that gives you a more positive outlook on the world. I thank you for watching, and I'll see you very soon, hopefully with a more optimistic video.